Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is RH Midwest Comics, and today we've got the top 10 pre-code horror comics, the 2024 edition. If you tuned in last week, I did the top 10 Bronze Age horror comics. This week we're going back to the Golden Age, so we're doing the top 10 pre-code. If you remember, I did this video last year as well, so let's see if the list remains the same. Not trying to spoil it, but we do have some new ones that are popping into the top 10, which means some have fallen out, but I'll go through all that as well. And before we get into the top 10, we're actually going to do some honorable mentions like we do every time, just to show some ones that barely missed getting into the top 10, or maybe some that just barely fell out from last year. And then as we end the video, I'm just going to do a little bit of a collage of a bunch of other great pre-code horror books that didn't quite make the cut to make either the top 10 or the honorable mentions. So before we get started here, just a quick reminder, this Saturday, the 26th, we're going to be having on Instagram our annual horror claim sale. So if you follow me on Instagram, you've been seeing all the previews. We've got more previews to come, but we're going to start at 6 o'clock Eastern, and 6 o'clock is going to be part one, where we're just going to do $5, $10, and $15 books, and we're going to do that for 1 or 2 hours. And then at 8 o'clock we're going to get into the bigger books, so everything $20 and up, and there are going to be some pretty expensive books on there. So we've got 2 sessions, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, hundreds of books. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go check me out over there. The live sales are really a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to it, especially since this horror claim sale is really just a once-a-year thing for us. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the top pre-code horror comics, starting with our honorable mentions. The first one up is Amazing Mysteries number 32. Now this one fell out of the top 10. It was number 10 last year. This is still one of my favorites because this is the first horror comic book from Marvel, and it was from 1949, and it was continued. So this is the first issue of the Amazing Mysteries series. It was continued from Submariner Comics, which went all the way up to issue 31. And according to CGC, the cover artist is unknown for this book, but I do think it's important because it is the first Marvel horror comic book, and the art is kind of cool. You see all these people walking like lemmings into this, I don't know, fire-breathing mountain skull type of thing, and you got the full moon in the background. You know me and those full moons. I love it. So anyway, still a great book. Honorable mention, Amazing Mysteries number 32. Next up on the list, another book that fell out of the top 10, Chamber of Chills number 23. This one was number 9 on the list last year, and again, still a great book. It's a Lee Elias cover. It's from Harvey, 1954. But the only reason it fell out is because, you know, some other books have grown on me over the past year or so. And, you know, just remember, these are just my opinions on which books are in the top 10, right? So again, this is still an honorable mention. Great book with the skeleton diving in on this woman for a kiss, it looks like, and she's tearing off pieces of them, and she's trying to fight them off. So still a great book. All right, next honorable mention, again another book that fell out of the top 10. This is Mr. Mystery number 12, and this one was number 4 on the list last year, so this fell quite a bit, from all the way from number 4 out of the top 10, but still on the honorable mention list for me. And it's a Bernard Bailey cover. It's from 1953 from a publisher called Aragon, and this is the classic hot poker to the eye cover, and it is pretty gruesome thinking about what's going to happen to this guy and that thing going into his eyeball. So again, not my top 10 anymore, but still a great cover. And wow, it's just the detail on it, right? And the guy sweating and the tear coming out of his eye and the detail on the eyeball itself. Great cover. All right, next on the honorable mention list, this one was an honorable mention last year as well. This is Fight Against Crime number 20, and it's from Story Comics, 1954. Artist unknown, and it's another classic decapitation cover. We've got 2 or 3 that are going to be along the lines of decapitations on this list. And just, you know, the gruesomeness of this guy having two parts to this lady. In one hand, he's holding her head. The other hand, he's holding her body. He's about to dump it all into the sewer. And the cops are showing up. And this guy's pretty much caught red-handed here. But anyway, great cover. Doesn't quite make it into the top 10, but still really, really like this cover. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't noticed, last year I didn't really put any crime books in the top 10 because I was trying to separate horror and crime. But this year you're going to see a little bit of that because there are crime books that have an element of horror in them. And I think, you know, there's a fine line between just being a crime book and just being a horror book. You know, horror is crime, crime is horror in most parts. But what I did avoid on this list is any type of crime book that is strictly like, you know, cops and robbers type of stuff. You know, so I could be including crime books that have an element of horror in it. Okay, here we go. Next on the list, honorable mention. Only a couple left here. New to the honorable mentions list, Witch's Tales number 25 from Harvey. Again, Harvey had a lot of great horror comics back in the 50s. 1954, Howard Nostrand cover. And this is a head that has been severed, classic cover. And that head is being used as the clapper in the middle of the belt. Yes, that little thing that rings the bell that hangs from it in the middle of the belt. It's called a clapper, for anyone that didn't know. All right, so classic cover. And I thought it was worthy of at least being an honorable mention this year. So there you have it. All right. 2 more honorable mentions to go. Next one, another new one to the honorable mentions list. Crime Does Not Pay, number 24. This is a gruesome cover. And like I had mentioned earlier, right, some crime books I'm putting into the horror genre here because of the element of horror associated with it. So this is way back from 1942, you know, and if you know, true horror didn't really start until the early 50s when it really caught on. But when you look at this cover and look how gruesome it is, this guy is holding this woman's head down to the stovetop and her head is literally catching fire right on the cover there. And if you look behind this guy, he's got this little shadowy figure popping up behind him. Well, that person is Mr. Crime. And that is his first appearance in this issue, and he sticks around for other issues, you know, going forward in this title. And kind of a creepy thing, right? He tells, I think he might narrate the story, but he also kind of encourages people to do terrible things as well and commit crimes and horrors and atrocities. So not a lot of these around, only 49 on the census. And again, an extremely pricey book. Great addition to the honorable mention list. And last but not least, for honorable mentions, this is new to the honorable mention list this year. Was not anywhere on the list last year. Journey into Mystery number 6. This is from Atlas, 1953, classic Bill Everett wedding cover. Lots of people really like this cover, and it's growing on me a little bit. It's a pricey book, and I say that with a lot of these, but some of these are a lot pricier than others. You know, for me, it doesn't quite make the top 10 because I don't know, maybe there's just not enough detail on it, or the type of art, or the way it's drawn, but still classic cover, very popular cover, and in demand for sure. Anytime this book comes up for auction, there's a hefty price being paid. Okay, that's it for the honorable mentions. Let's get into the top 10. Here we go. New to the top 10 list this year, and it jumped out. It wasn't even in honorable mentions last year. So coming in at number 10, Haunted Thrills number 6 from Feral in 1953. This is a Carl Burgos cover, classic skull cover with the skeleton rolling the dice and rolling snake eyes, and you see the devil in the background there. Just very cool cover. Skull covers are increasingly popular. I think some people are getting tired of them because they've been so popular for the past year or so. But this is just, the way this is drawn is pretty cool. And, you know, the fire in the background as well. And there's another book, I think it's, this magazine is Haunted. There's a really nice skull cover as well. That didn't quite make the top 10 or the honorable mention. I'm going to have a picture of it at the end, you know, in the collage that I put together. But that kind of reminds me of this book as well. So anyway, new to the top 10, Haunted Thrills number 6. Coming in at number 9, this is one of only 2 EC books I have in the top 10. And this is new to the top 10 list this year. This is Shock Suspense Stories number 6. Again, from EC in 1953. Wally Wood cover. Classic bondage cover with these guys, these hooded guys who are about to perform some kind of ritual. But just the art on this cover is really amazing to me. Yes, it's got a full moon, but I'm not just talking about that. But just the way it's drawn, right? When I go back and look at some of the other ones, like that Journey in Mystery number 6 we looked at a couple minutes ago, right? It's more cartoonish, whereas this one, yes, everything's animated cover and cartoony, but this one just has more detail and maybe more soft colors to it and soft edges and better use of colors. I am not an artist by any means, but I know it's pleasing to the eye for me. Just the way the colors are used and the way the colors are brushed on there is, again, very appealing. So really well done cover by Wally Wood. That is number 9. Coming in at number 8, Venus number 19, another classic cover. This was not in the top 10 last year, but it was an honorable mention. So it's jumped into the top 10 at number 8, and just a great Bill Everett cover. You know, apparently the skeleton, had a fake human face on, and this woman didn't know about it until the face popped up. And you see, again, right, just the way the art is, and these 3, skeleton ghouls in the background here looking on, watching what's happening. Just really ominous. So another expensive book. Great cover. That's number 8. Coming in at number 7, here's an expensive book and a very rare one. Punch Comics number 12. Again, another book that last year was an honorable mention, and I think I probably put it as an honorable mention last year because I kind of binned it into that crime category. But again, right, with the element of horror on this cover and the skull, just I had to pop it in at number 7. You could argue this thing would be number 1 on a lot of people's lists, I'm pretty sure. This is a Gus Rica cover, and the publisher is Harry A. Chesler. It's from 1945, so again, before horror really took over, which was in the early 50s, right? And you talk about rare, there are only 34 of these on the CGC census, and there's nothing higher than an 8.0. So, hard to find this book, let alone in high grade, all right? And the price of this book, it looks like when I looked at prices briefly, like every 1 to 2 years, the price of this book in every grade is doubling. They don't sell that often though, so it's kind of hard to put that data together, but that's what I noticed. Just really jumping up. All right, number 6, Lawbreaker Suspense Stories number 11. So this one was number 7 last year, so it's moved up a spot. This is from Charlton, 1953, Lou Morales cover, and it's extremely gruesome. When you really look at the details, you see this woman who's like scared out of her mind, and then this crazy guy standing there. Well, if you look closely, in his right hand he's got a whole bunch of severed tongues, and in his left hand he's got a knife, and you can see there's like blood dripping off of it, or there's another tongue on the ground there. So he's got a whole bunch of people in his house, and he's cut off their tongues so that nobody can yell or scream for help. And this lady happens to not be able to talk, so she's probably going to keep her tongue, but no help is coming. That's the point here. And just really, really gruesome. All right, so this one stays on the list, moves up a spot to number 6. Now let's get into the top 5. Coming in at number 5, Eerie number 1. So this one was number 6 on the list last year, so this one as well moved up 1 spot. It's from Avon, 1947, Joe Kubert cover, and this is arguably the first ever horror comic. And again, right, with horror comics really not gaining a lot of steam into the early 50s, right? When you talk about mid to late 40s, there wasn't a lot of horror out there. But this one, a lot of people say, is the first horror comic, and you see this this guy that, I don't know, he kind of reminds me of like a Nosferatu type of creature, with a knife in his hand coming up to this lady who's all tied up. Great cover, expensive book. Again, doesn't come around often. I didn't look up the census on this one, but it does not pop up very often. All right, number 4 on the list, Crime Suspense Stories number 22. This is the second EC book on the list. This one dropped a couple spots. It was number 2 on my list last year. I've dropped it to number 4. This is, again, EC 1954. Awesome Johnny Craig cover. So I showed you that one decapitation cover earlier in the honorable mentions. I think that was Fight Against Crime number 20. I like this one a little bit better only because there's a little more detail. I guess when you look at the head and the eyes rolled back into the back of the head, and you know, the blood on the axe, even though the blood is black, because I think even though there wasn't a code back then, you know, there were some things they still weren't allowed to do and or didn't want to do, and some of it had to do with not showing blood on the cover. So in this case they made it black instead of red. You know, this EC books in general are more available than a lot of books on these lists, right? The census count is higher, but you know, I'm not just looking at rarity or, you know, price of the books to determine what goes on this list, but this one I think is one of the most, this and the other one I showed, Shock number 6, are 2 of the most desirable EC books out there, right, in the horror genre. So there are some other great ones as well, and I'll show some of those at the end, you know, at the end of the video. But yeah, this is one of the favorites for many people out there, including myself. Okay, so that's number 4. 3 more to go. Coming in at number 3, Tomb of Terror number 15. This one was number 5 on the list last year, so it's popped up a couple spots up to number 3. Again, it's a Harvey cover. It's a Lee Elias cover. Lee Elias had so many great covers in the horror genre. This is the classic exploding face cover. Look at that eyeball popping out of the head, the teeth popping out. Just a lot of great detail on there, and that woman is horrified. I think we would all look like that woman if that happened in front of us. A lot of detail to this cover, so classic cover. All right, 2 more to go. What are they going to be? Number 2 on the list, Chamber of Chills number 19. This one was number 2 on the list last year as well. Harvey, again, from 1953. Lee Elias, again. This book really became more popular. It was always a popular and expensive book, but it became really popular after the rock band The Misfits used this picture for one of their album covers. And so as people kind of link those together, this has gained popularity, and likewise when that happens, the price goes up and a lot of these books become unaffordable for so many people out there. Classic cover, Chamber of Chills number 19. Number 2. Now let's get to the number 1 pre-code horror cover of 2024, and it is Black Cat Mystery number 50. This is the defending champion last year, and it remains number 1 on the list this year. Another Harvey book from 1954. Another Lee Elias cover again. Lee Elias with so many great covers. Classic melting face and hands cover, the guy holding the radium, and again, he's just melting away. You see the bones starting to show from his hands, and you know, parts of his skull are showing. Just gruesome cover, very similar to number 3, Tomb of Terror number 15, right? So the look on this guy's face says it all, right? He doesn't know what's going on, he doesn't know how to stop it, and that's got to be a horrible feeling. All right, so that's it. That is number 1. That's the top 10 list for 2024 pre-code horror covers. And this was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Let me know in the comments what books you like, what books you would put on the list. Always gives me ideas for next year. So don't be afraid to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. And as we wrap things up here, I'm going to let you listen to some music and see some pictures of some other great pre-code horror comics that didn't quite make the list. Again, hope you enjoyed it. Hope everybody has a safe and fun Halloween. Until next time, have a great night.